Hey, thanks for joining me. This is Tom Knighton. Welcome back to the Fourth Rail. This week we've got a big one. We are talking about what's going on in New Mexico. Governor Grisham there absolutely lost her mind, and you know, any hope of pretending that her oath of office means jack squat. That's right. She essentially suspended the right to bear arms in the city of Albuquerque unilaterally without any input from the legislature, without any concern about federal law or the United States Constitution. She did this under the guise of saying that this was a public health emergency, a public health crisis that had to be dealt with immediately. And so she took what action was available to her and decided that law abiding citizens were really the problem. Don't want to take my word for it? Not a problem, folks. We can do that right here. I am going to play a video for you showing exactly what the governor said.
You took an oath to the Constitution. Isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carrying license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute. There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on my freedoms. In this emergency, this 11-year-old and all these parents who have lost all these children, they deserve my attention to have the debate about whether or not in an emergency we can create a safer environment. Because what about their constitutional rights? I took an oath to uphold those too. And if we ignore this growing problem without being bold, I've said to every other New Mexican, your rights are subrogated to theirs. And they are not, in my view.
Wait a minute. You're talking about crimes. There are already laws against the crimes, so how are their rights?
But again, if I'm unsafe, who's standing up for that right? If this climate is so out of control, somebody should do something. I'm doing as much as I know to do.
Madam Governor, do you really think that criminals are going to hear this message and not carry a gun in Albuquerque on the streets for 30 days?
No.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. Let's start with the very end. She does not believe that criminals are going to stop carrying in Albuquerque, which makes it really clear that she believes law abiding citizens are the problem. One of the things she says is she talks about safety, about this right to safety. Folks, you don't have a right to safety. You don't, right? Because safety cannot be promised, it cannot be guaranteed. I can guarantee your right to say what you want without fear of arrest. I can't guarantee that people aren't going to get angry because that's beyond my control. I can guarantee you have the right to say it. That's the way rights work is we can't prevent things from happening. But what we can do is prevent government action stopping things from happening. In particular, say your right to protest. There can be no law preventing your right to protest. And so when she's talking about safety, this idea that you can guarantee safety, that there is a inherent right to safety, not really. Okay. At least not with regard to government action. Because if the government takes on this idea that they can guarantee safety and I'm hit by a car, did they fail? They've taken a number of steps to try to make, cars safer, and to regulate how people drive, but you can't actually ensure safety because, well, life is full of risks, right? You can't just unilaterally say, well, we're going to protect the right to safety, because I hate to break it to her, her rules, if they were followed to the letter, and every law-abiding citizen in Albuquerque decided, I will comply with the rule. Can't call it a law because it's not, but I'm going to comply with this dictate, not carry my firearm. And then on his way to work, he's carjacked and killed because he does not have his firearm. How's that protecting anyone's safety? How? What if instead of having that gun on their person, it's in say a small lockbox type gun safe in their home? and someone breaks in the house, steals that lockbox, goes home, gains entry to it. Now they have a gun that they can use illegally. How is that keeping anyone safer? These are just a couple of potential scenarios showing how this rule could actually create a less safe environment. Right? And I get that an 11-year-old was killed. It was absolutely tragic. It was a road rage incident, apparently, at least based on my understanding of it. It shouldn't have happened. No one's going to pretend it should have. It's absolutely tragic. There were several high-profile homicides of children in Albuquerque. It's awful. I mean, as a parent, I can't even try to put myself in those shoes. The one time I thought about it, I broke down in tears just thinking about the loss. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Nothing changed. Nothing at all changed. The kind of people who would shoot wantonly, right? And most kids are killed through wanton action. People just not caring. They're being, very reckless in their actions. Do you think those people think it through? Do you think they're gonna go, well, I'm gonna leave my gun at home because that's illegal? Of course not. Not gonna happen. They're gonna carry their guns. They're not gonna have it locked and secured like they're supposed to under this rule. They're gonna carry it locked and loaded. And whenever they decide they're gonna unload, they're gonna unload. Nothing changed. This is not doing any good. Now, there are some facts that surround this we should consider. One is that this isn't even popular among the gun control crowd. David Hogg actually tweeted against this, saying that he supports gun safety, the euphemism for gun control these days, but he supports that gun safety, but there's no authority that a governor can take that lets her just unilaterally suspend parts of the U.S. Constitution because of public health crisis. Not a statewide one, at least. So there's some pushback there, right? We're seeing a lot of that. Republican lawmakers in the state have already talked about impeachment. They believe they can get Democrats on board. They're in the legislature. This is a blue state. Democrats control both chambers of the legislature. They're going to have to if they're going to get anywhere. They actually think they can do it, right? That should be terrifying to Grisham. She should be shaking in her boots over this in and of itself, right? The idea that she could be removed for exercising what she believes is legitimate authority. It's not, though. Okay? It's not. Because I hate to agree with David Hogg, but there's no authority any governor has to declare a public health crisis, a public health emergency, and suspend constitutional rights. Yes, powers have been invoked during emergencies, and there's always been repercussions. There's always been concern when they overstep. Let's not forget the video of police during Katrina coming to this woman's home saying, are you have food? Do you have water? And she's like, yeah, I got plenty of food. I got water. Are you safe? Well, yeah, I got a gun over there. And they damn near gang tackle her. She wasn't threatening them. She was freely admitting she had a firearm in Louisiana where it was perfectly legal for her to own a firearm. I remember that video quite well. I'm sure a lot of you may remember it too. If not, you might be a little young for it. And that's fine. At the end of the day, you do not have that authority. You cannot just decide out of the blue as a governor, I can suspend constitutional rights. And let's also remember that as bad as things were during COVID, the right to keep and bear arms was upheld. Several courts actually said shutting down gun stores was a violation of the Second Amendment. So, even there, she's on shaky ground. We also saw protests, right? Freedom of speech during a pandemic was upheld repeatedly. I didn't hear Grisham, whining about people violating lockdowns when they were burning cities in mobs. Let's not forget the George Floyd protests, the 2020 Summer of Fire of Black Lives Matter protests. were during a lockdown. They were during a pandemic. Everyone was supposed to wear a mask. Everyone was supposed to keep 6 feet away. Everyone was supposed to do all these things. Nobody did it then. And I don't remember her saying anything. I remember her being ominously quiet. Funny, isn't it? Your rights don't go away because somebody decided there's an emergency, right? If there's good news in this whole thing, it's that it doesn't look like any local police have any interest in actually enforcing this law. The sheriff has said he has constitutional issues and isn't going to, prosecute anybody for carrying a firearm with a permit or open carry as is legal in the state. And the mayor of Albuquerque said it ain't their place to enforce this rule. So local police aren't going to do it either. That leaves state police. And the truth of the matter is, state police have an entire state to cover. They're not going to spend that much time in Albuquerque. It's just not, they don't have the resources to do it. So very few people are going to be arrested because of this, if anyone is arrested because of this. In fact, there was a big protest. Tons of people were going to show up. They showed up armed. I want to say like around 5,000 people showed up armed. 0 arrests. Nobody wanted it. Right? Now let's talk a little bit about this whole public health crisis thing, this public health emergency. A couple weeks back, I did a video about taking a look at something from Bloomberg where a doctor is talking about gun violence as a public health emergency. It's a public health crisis. We have to treat it as such. Folks, this is what that means, okay? What we're seeing now is what that ultimately means. It's not something that we could get behind, which is let's go after the root causes like we would for any disease. Let's address, the causes. Let's find out why people become violent and address it there. Let's try to stop the cycle of violence where a person gets shot, they don't get killed, but then they decide to retaliate. All that stuff is fine. That's non-controversial. But that's not what they're talking about, right? What they're talking about is what just happened in New Mexico. And part of the reason Grisham is not getting the people rallying around her that she probably expected is because she tipped her hand. The public was not ready for this. They were not primed enough to accept this, that this was the only way to go. And now the gig is up, right? I know the jig is up, whatever. You get what I mean. You know what I'm talking about, folks. So at the end of the day, this is what this is. This is where it is. And I don't expect this to go the full 30 days. Okay. Because it's interesting because she actually leaves open extending this, right? So it could be 30 days. And if she feels a need to extend it another 30, another 60, whatever, she can. I don't think that's going to be the case only because I don't see her finding a friendly enough court that will signal it's okay, right? I fully expect there to be an injunction. If not, before you see this video, then shortly thereafter. I don't see there being a stay on that injunction because it's just insane. So she's going to get every signal that this is not going to go well. She won't extend it and then try to get out of the situation by saying, hey, it's a moot point. It's not a moot point because she did it, and at some point, someone else will try to do this. And guys, we ain't got time for that mess. Right? At the end of the day, my hope is the impeachment works. Okay? I hope Grisham's removed from office because anybody who does this does not deserve to be in public office. This is the time in years past when rails, tar, and feather would be applied. And I would not necessarily say that's a bad thing right now. It's time to, sometimes you just want to go back to the classics. I'm not saying we should because this is YouTube and we know how that'll go. But I do get the sentiment. And so let's not pretend this is okay or this is just some minor glitch. This is big. And frankly, Grisham should be ashamed of herself. Any Democrat that supports her should be ashamed of themselves. Any Republican that just kind of shrugs this off should be ashamed of themselves. At the end of the day, folks, these are our rights. We do not stand for our rights. We will lose them. You want to know why we don't compromise on gun control anymore because we watched our rights be, whittled away piece by piece like little slivers of wood. And eventually, you go all the way through the stick. I'm not interested in being there when that happens. Governor Grisham, this is your chance to back up and realize you screwed up. You see this? Take that to heart. Say, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. We're done. Don't do that. And there is no repercussion I'm going to see that befall you under the eyes of the law that I'm going to really feel bad about. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up because, good Lord, I could talk about this for hours. And y'all don't want to watch that. You don't, right? And besides, it's not like I'm the only one talking about this. There's going to be other people talking about it. And it's going to be an interesting conversation going forward, especially since so many anti-gunners are actually saying, whoa, horsies. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I will see you all next week.